I'd always been a fan of vintage shops and flea markets. There was something about finding old, unique items that fascinated me. So, when I moved into my new apartment, I spent my weekends scouring shops for the perfect pieces to furnish my place. One Saturday, I stumbled upon an old, ornate mirror at a small, dusty antique store. The shop owner, a frail old man with piercing blue eyes, sold it to me for a bargain, claiming it had a lot of history. I didn't think much of it at the time, but that mirror would soon become the source of my nightmares. I hung the mirror in my living room, pleased with how it looked. It was large and heavy, with a beautifully carved wooden frame that gave it an air of elegance. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. But then, strange things started to happen. One evening, as I was watching TV, I noticed movement in the mirror out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, but there was nothing there, just my reflection staring back at me. I shrugged it off, blaming my overactive imagination, but the occurrences became more frequent. I would catch glimpses of shadows moving behind me, reflections that didn't belong, and faint, ghostly images that would vanish as soon as I looked directly at them. The most unsettling part was the feeling of being watched. Whenever I was in the living room, I felt a constant pressure, as if eyes were boring into my back. It was an oppressive, suffocating sensation that made it hard to relax. I tried moving the mirror to a different room, but the feeling followed it. It was as if the mirror had a life of its own. One night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. It was faint, almost inaudible, but it was coming from the living room. I got out of bed, my heart pounding, and crept towards the sound. As I approached the mirror, the whispering grew louder, more distinct. It was a woman's voice, soft and mournful, repeating the same phrase over and over. "Help me." I stood there, frozen with fear, staring into the mirror. The reflection was normal, just my living room dimly lit by the moonlight. But the voice continued, growing more urgent. I didn't know what to do. I felt helpless, terrified, and alone. The next day, I decided to investigate the mirror's history. I went back to the antique store, but it was closed, and a "for sale" sign hung in the window. Frustrated, I turned to the internet, searching for any information about the mirror or similar experiences. After hours of research, I found an old newspaper article about a woman named Eleanor, who had lived in my apartment building in the 1920s. She was a beautiful young actress. According to the article, she was heartbroken after a failed love affair, and had spent her last days staring into a mirror, the very mirror now hanging in my living room. Determined to free Eleanor from whatever torment she was in, I sought help from a local historian who specialized in the paranormal. Her name was Claire, and she was known for her expertise in haunted artifacts. When I showed her the mirror, she immediately sensed the dark energy surrounding it. "This mirror is a conduit," she explained. "Eleanor's spirit is trapped within it, unable to move on." Claire suggested performing a cleansing ritual to release Eleanor's spirit. We prepared for the ritual that night. Claire brought candles, sage, and other tools needed to perform the cleansing. As we set up, the air in the apartment grew colder, and the oppressive feeling intensified. We began the ritual by lighting the candles and burning the sage. Claire chanted an incantation, asking for Eleanor's spirit to be released. As she spoke, the whispering started again, louder and more desperate than before. The candles flickered, and the room seemed to vibrate with an unseen force. Suddenly, the mirror began to shake violently. I watched in horror as Eleanor's ghostly image appeared in the glass. She looked just as the newspaper described, beautiful, but with an expression of profound sadness. Her eyes locked onto mine, and I felt an overwhelming sense of sorrow and despair. Claire continued her chant, her voice steady and strong. "Eleanor, it's time to move on. You are free from this place." With a final deafening crack, the mirror shattered, sending shards of glass flying across the room. The candles went out, plunging us into darkness. I felt a rush of cold air, and then silence. When I turned on the lights, the room was a mess, but the oppressive feeling was gone. Claire assured me that Eleanor's spirit was finally at peace. We cleaned up the glass and disposed of the mirror's remains. In the days that followed, the apartment felt lighter, as if a dark cloud had been lifted. The strange occurrences stopped, and I no longer felt watched. I still think about Eleanor sometimes and hope she found the peace she was seeking.